In a move that I'm sure will surprise pretty much nobody, Wizards of the Coast has gone ahead and issued a ban on Time Spiral after the events of the recent Strixhaven Championship.
The Magic Historian.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. Welcome to bonus time. This is the second video that I am releasing today, my friends. The earlier video was talking about the Stranger Things secret lair, so if you haven't already checked that out, feel free to do so after we go over our discussion of today's banning announcement. Now, this just happened within the last hour or two, all right? Because this wasn't on the Magic News radar earlier today. What has happened? Wizards of the Coast has come out and banned this card right here. A nice old mainstay from the old days of Magic the Gathering, an attempt to fix Time Walk, right? Because Time Walk back in the day, 1 blue and 1 for a sorcery that gives you an extra turn, which we all know, 2 mana for an extra turn, that's way too strong. So Time Warp came out years later and was like, hey, maybe I'm the right balance. And even then, 5 mana for an extra turn turns out to be really, really powerful. Not too unbalanced, but really powerful. And I have to say, I honestly love the way that this Mystic Archive variation looks. It's a beautiful looking card. So Time Warp is 2 and 3 for a sorcery that says target player takes an extra turn after this one. And the flavor text says, Chronomancers have a rather different definition of living in the moment. Well, your moment's over. You're out of time. This card is no longer legal in Historic on Arena. Surprise, surprise. And that actually makes it completely useless on Arena since Time Warp was never standard legal. You imagine that being in standard right now? Well, I mean, they'd have to ban it for the same reason they've had to ban it in Historic, because the real culprit behind the scenes that's causing the problem that led to Time Warp needing to go, that's this guy right here. He's certainly not making games drag on. Get it? That's a dragon joke. All right, so this is Velomachus Lorehold, and he is obnoxious. 1 white, 1 red, and 5 for a 5/5 flying vigilance haste. So he flies right out the gate at your face like, what's up? I'm here. Here I come. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is his ability. Whenever Velomachus Lorehold attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to Velomachus's power from among them without paying its mana cost. There's the key right there. Without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Like, it's absolutely amazing to me that they thought, you know what? Let's make a dragon where you can just cast a spell that costs 5 or less for free off the top of your deck. What's wrong with that? I mean, you're only digging 7 cards deep into a pile of what? At most, maybe 45 to 50 cards. And you're digging 7 deep and playing the spell for free. I've said this time and again when it comes to problem cards in Magic the Gathering. Free costs are not a good idea. The entire way that Magic is balanced is through its casting cost system. And I get that abilities like this are flashy. It's like, whoa, lordy, think of all the things I can do. But then when those things get put into practice, you end up with broken nonsense, like combining it with Time Warp. So it's like, oh, look, I'll put out Velomachus. I'll swing. Oh, look, there's a Time Warp. I'll play the Time Warp. I get another turn. I'll untap the dragon. I'll swing again. And it's not even like it stops the combat damage from Velomachus from being dealt. So he gets to hit and you get the Time Warp. So it's like, dig 7 deep. Oh, look at Time Warp. Dig 7 deep. Oh, look at Time Warp. Dig 7 deep. Oh, look at Time Warp. You're dead. Like, that is the kind of scenario. So let's take a look at the official announcement here. I'll read it out for you. It says, when Strixhaven was released, we expected to see significant changes in the historic metagame due to a host of powerful mystical archive cards. We're certainly seeing those results now. So, I mean, on one hand, I do want to take a moment to say it is cool that Wizards decided to take a bunch of old school cards, give them this mystical archive treatment, not only so that we get them in physical, but also to bring those cards into Arena. I do like that. I'm not against that concept. Now, the statement continues. In the recent Strixhaven Championship Tournament, 5 of the top 8 and all of the top 4 historic decks were Jeskai turn decks, prominently featuring Time Warp. Also prominently featuring Lorehold, but we don't want to mention him because he's a new card and there's nothing wrong with his design. In addition to the results of this event, our ladder play data from Historic also shows this to be an extremely powerful deck that is challenging for many other decks to disrupt and boasts very few bad matchups. Oh, you mean attacking with dragons and taking a bunch of turns in a row is difficult to deal with when your opponent has to be able to answer it right away? Can you stop me from lore holding you right away? No? Okay, good. Time Warp, do it again. Time Warp, do it again. Like, dude, it's crazy. And after the first turn, you've got other mana available. Like the first turn you cast Lorehold, you're tapped out. But after that, you've got all your mana available, and Lorehold is still rolling in, casting whatever. Even if he doesn't get you a Time Warp, he can let you cast a spell that will put a Time Warp in your hand that you can then cast, right? So it's obviously incredibly powerful, and it's not surprising that there were very few bad matchups because it's pretty much almost an instant win if they can't do something immediately once you get this dragon out. So, the statement continues, though we often like to see how the metagame adjusts to tournament results like these, when the deck involved has play patterns that prevent the opponent from playing the game, and when our data suggests that it lacks a significant number of bad matchups, we favor acting quickly. For these reasons, Time Warp is banned in Historic. Let's be very, very real, my friends. If they didn't ban Time Warp in this format, everybody would be playing Lorehold. That's what Historic would become. The meta would become insanely stagnant. So the statement continues. More broadly, the Strixhaven Championship Historic metagame was clearly dominated by blue-red base decks, with Izzet Phoenix and Jeskai Control also proving to be both popular and successful. Much of the discussion has centered on the power of the Mystical Archive editions, most notably Brainstorm. And the addition of these cards is something we've been monitoring closely. However, with these decks, we see a different pattern than with Jeskai turns. Both decks provide more opportunities for an opposing deck to counter their strategies. And we also see multiple other top-tier decks that show strong records against one or both. Furthermore, neither deck is demonstrating win rates at the same level as Jeskai turns. Because of this, we do think a wait-and-watch strategy is best here to see how the metagame adapts to the removal of Jeskai turns. We will be monitoring closely to see how the rest of the metagame can adapt, and we're prepared to take further action soon if we do not see things moving in a positive direction. So, on one hand, obviously creating cards like Lorehold leads to these kind of scenarios, and I think Wizards needs to be a little more careful with their making things free setup, right? I like them taking some risks in terms of bringing powerful older cards into the format, because Historic ultimately will be dull and just like a small variant of Standard Plus if they don't find ways to bring in new outside interesting cards, right? And I do genuinely like that they take much faster action, right? I've been with Magic for a long time, and I've seen what happens if you allow a bad situation to stay and fester. They basically go, oh, please, let's hope that it gets sorted out. And then it almost never does. It almost never does at a certain threshold. And with this Lorehold deck, it's literally just answer me now or the game is pretty much over. It's too resilient. It's too effective. And once you get it rolling, it's almost unavoidable, right? If I can get my initial Lorehold setup rolling on you, you're probably done for. You're probably never getting another turn before I win the game. I only have to cast 3 of my 4 Time Warps, and you're never getting another turn because 5 times 4 is 20 damage, and you're already out of the game, right? So, in this case, the banning makes sense. I can see why they wouldn't want to ban Lorehold over Time Warp. Time Warp is a very powerful card, and banning Lorehold and Historic probably wouldn't go over too well. People don't want the newest cards being banned, but ultimately, it does suck that this card was only added for historic purposes, and now it's essentially a completely dead card. Because in my opinion, the one-on-one challenges we can do where we can use these cards, they don't really count for anything. So it makes the card useless, and that's never a good experience. So I assume, I don't know how it works, but I assume that because this has been banned in Historic, anybody who has copies of this will be provided new Mythic Rare wildcards, and that banning takes effect tomorrow. So I do wonder if you actually have the opportunity to spend some wildcards to get them ahead of time and then get the wildcards back so you own the Time Warps just so you won't get them in packs later on. Like, when a card gets banned, it automatically gets, like, slotted to the last. So you won't get Time Warps until you have, like, every other rare and mythic from the Mystical Archives, I think. You can't quote me on that for sure, but I think that's how it works. So, the ban goes into effect tomorrow. It's not really surprising that they've made this choice. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, my friends. And as I mentioned in the earlier video, Magic Historian playmats are now available down in the description. Grab yourself one. They are quite nice. Thanks for coming by. See you guys next time.